She was awarded her PhD from the University of Cambridge entitled Imagining Afghanistan, the History and Politics of Imperial Knowledge Production back in 2015.
I did go to do my A-levels at the British School in New Delhi. So to go from India to the UK was a fairly simple and straightforward journey for me.
She's a lecturer at Queen Mary University of London. She's a researcher and author and editor-in-chief of the journal Politics.
In terms of UK-India relations, they do seem stronger than ever. I think Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Boris Johnson are.
NewsX proudly presents the VaKu Diaspora Dialogue with Dr. Nivi Manchanda. Hello and welcome. We are watching NewsX VaKu. Joining me on the broadcast is Dr. Nivi Manchanda. She's a senior lecturer in international politics. She teaches in Queen Mary University of London. She's completed her BA from School of Oriental and African Studies in London and her MPhil and PhD from Cambridge. It's good to have you, Dr. Nivi Manchanda.
Thank you so much for having me, Megha.
Nivi, if you could explain to us about your work. Was it really your ambition and your motivation that brought you to London to study politics and then going about becoming a lecturer?
I think it was definitely my motivation to go sort of abroad to study something. That was pretty clear to me. I don't think I was set on academia when I first started, but I did go to do my A-levels at the British School in New Delhi. So to go from India to the UK was a fairly simple and straightforward journey for me.
Okay. And, you've progressively improved on your craft, progressively improved on your skills in terms of studying further. You've joined School of Politics and International Relations back in 2017. You have also gone and worked for London School of Economics, University of Leiden in Netherlands. How has this entire experience been like? Keeping in mind that it's a job for professor, job for lecturer, you need to be keeping yourself updated with all things politics, and that's your criteria. That's your subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting. I really do enjoy the research and the teaching. Politics itself, I think, is quite a difficult thing at the moment. I guess it's always been. So although I love teaching and researching, I'm not sure I always love what's happening in the world. So you kind of have to, navigate that, being quite angry at the state of affairs internationally and domestically, both the UK and sometimes in India, but also knowing that, it's an important thing to do and being driven by the developments, being driven by a love for teaching and research. So, and also it's been quite interesting moving contexts. So mostly I've been in London and Cambridge, but the Netherlands was also interesting because it was a slightly different, it was a different context in terms of mainland Europe, but also the developments in the Netherlands were quite different, and Paris too. Although I was teaching for the University of London in Paris, so it was all in English. It was also quite interesting being in Europe and in Paris for a while.
Okay, interesting. And also the subject matter of politics when you move to Paris, when you move to Netherlands, when you're teaching in several other universities, with a different set of individuals, different set of students, it is exhilarating an experience. Also, it becomes an all-encompassing scenario where you are taking a look at the local politics and then realigning yourself with what is happening across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely exhilarating. I think the difference between what I do and what somebody else, perhaps, who's actually more focused on domestic politics or the politics of the ground, is that my area of expertise is more theoretical. So that doesn't change. I'm interested in in political philosophy, in theories of international relations, including things like post-colonialism and race and gender. And whilst there are sort of mutations depending on the local context, the sort of larger arc remains the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've written theses, you've written books. Are there any new books that are in the offing? What are the subjects of it? Very interesting to understand that the thesis that you had gone back, written 2014, was Imagining Afghanistan, the History and Politics of Imperial Knowledge Production. And this is a very topical subject at this point of time, keeping in mind the kind of situation and a conflict-like situation that has continued to prevail over there. Is that something that you would like to continue on from here on, maybe perhaps a second thesis or another book?
Yeah, so like I say, the sort of conceptual stuff is something I'm working on continually. Imagining Afghanistan had a theoretical impetus, which was post-colonial studies, race studies, gender studies, which I'm continuing to work on, although I'm moving away from Afghanistan. So there's a different project, hopefully, which will culminate in a book. And I'm looking at borders now, borders through 4 different thinkers in 4 different parts of the world. And so, although it seems like quite a departure from my previous work, again, it is the theoretical, conceptual stuff that continues to drive me.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that you are focusing at this point of time on borders and how COVID-19 has virtually eradicated the concept of borders, spreading across the globe, hurting the economy as well as people when it comes to Europe, when it comes to United States, Australia. You know, the pandemic has spread, and we have been facing the repercussions of it in the past year and a half and more. What have your personal experiences been like during this sort of time?
Yeah, so of course, on the one hand, COVID-19 recognizes no borders. On the other hand, borders have become more sort of physical and material than ever before. So countries have closed their borders in very overt sort of shows of strength, of nationalism, of whatever you might call it. So yes, the disease might not recognize the border, but the implications of that are often more borders rather than fewer borders. In terms of my own personal experience, it hasn't been terrible. You know, my job has not been threatened. I've been able to work from home. I recently saw my parents after a very long time. I haven't been able to go to India since the beginning of last year. So that is obviously a bit of an issue. But on the whole, compared to most other people, I've been very fortunate. I haven't lost anybody, touch wood, that I'm close to. And I have been able to continue my life largely as normal. Obviously, we now teach online. There's no conferences. There's hardly any international travel. But apart from those things, and given the sort of experience of COVID-19 around the world, I've been very shielded from it.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Nivi Manchanda, for joining me on the broadcast and sharing your thoughts and analysis of how it is like living in London, living in United Kingdom, and also throwing in a lot of perspective on the global situations that are being faced by India, by powerful nations across the world, and as we see a tectonic shift that has happened post-COVID era.
Thank you so much for having me.
NewsX's ITV network have proudly launched the VaKu Diaspora Broadcasting Network.
VaKu DBN will be India's first mainstream platform dedicated to the diaspora community. Help support us. Become VaKu patrons at memboro.com/VaKu. You will get the first access to our interviews, make recommendations, merchandise access, ask questions, and get a shout out of thanks on our TV shows.
You can also suggest to us who should get the VaKu Golden Chakra Awards and also tell us who should get into the VaKu Hall of Fame. Limited memberships are available at 100 rupees per month on Memboro VaKu.
Sign up now. Log on to memboro.com/VaKu.